Are you wondering why you should learn a foreign language? Or maybe you're already interested but you aren't sure if you're good enough? Well, this is the video for you. Stick around. Всім привіт! Мене звуть Дмитро, мені 27 років, але мій день народження у лютому, у День Валентина. Вже пройшло більше року, вчусь я сама українську мову. Хоча я ще новачка. Українська мова моїй другій мові, але я була змушена вчитися французьку мову в школі, але я ще не знаю, як говорити французькою. Тому що моя вчителька французької не може розмовляти французькою. Тому я ніколи не навчилася розмовляти французькою. Hello, my name's Mithro and I'm 27 years old, though my birthday is in February on Valentine's Day, so I will be 28. I've studied Ukrainian language for a little over a year now, although I still consider myself a beginner. I was forced to learn French in school, but I don't consider myself to be able to speak French, mostly because my French teacher didn't actually know how to speak French, so I never learned how to speak French. I can read some French and I know some important phrases like tabarnak or voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? But I don't consider it a language that I actually know how to speak, which is pretty normal for most English-speaking Canadians. As a child, I loved listening to foreign music or mimicking sign language that I saw on TV, but in general, I was never really something that I was encouraged to learn, so I didn't really discover my love of languages until just recently, a few years ago. A few years ago, I started trying to learn ASL, and I learned a few words like some colors and how to say my name, but then I switched my focus to Ukrainian, which I've been a little bit over a year into now. So that's my language history, so you know where I'm coming from. I have my own disabilities that make language learning harder, but I will get into that later. In general, I'm just an average Canadian with no special perks for learning languages, and my goal is to show you that if I can do it, you can do it too. Let's start with reasons why you think that you can't learn another language. First, you think you're too old. I don't think this is true. I'm nearly 28 and I'm somewhat successfully learning my second language. Children are exposed to thousands and thousands of hours of content in order to pick up on a language, and it takes them many years. As an adult, you can choose what you're exposing yourself to more mindfully and choose to learn more quickly than a child does because of the type of learning that you're doing. You can expose yourself to many different kinds of content or review the same content over and over again, but eventually you will pick up on words and phrases that are meaningful to you, just like a child would. The next reason, maybe you think that you don't have enough language experience to learn a language. That's okay. Exposure to a language doesn't necessarily mean that you will learn it. It takes intention to learn a language, as well as exposure. You can do anything that you put your mind to. Maybe you're too busy. This is an excuse that a lot of people use, and I was one of them. I thought that I didn't have enough time in my day to do it or enough energy, but something that I realized is that we all have dead time in the day, and dead time is things like when you're washing the dishes, you could listen to a podcast, or when you're walking your dog, driving your car. Maybe you go to the bathroom and you pull up Duolingo for 5 minutes. All those things count as studying and exposing yourself to the language. Another thing that a lot of us are really guilty of is watching too much TV in our native language. Now, it's okay to have designated TV time in your native language. Make sure that you limit it and maybe use it as reward for your hard work in studying. I have designated TV time with my husband, but it's usually in the evening after I've done everything during the day. The important part is, if you make language learning important to you, then you'll make time for it. The next reason is a big reason that could really hinder your learning, and this is having disabilities. I have chronic fatigue syndrome, DID, fibromyalgia, ADHD, and suspected autism, all of which make learning a lot harder for me. Ways that they make it harder is I have trouble sitting and paying attention. I have a lot of pain. Maybe I don't have enough energy in the day to do my studying. I also have reading issues, dissociative amnesia, and I have difficulty understanding some concepts, especially if they're really theoretical. So this is why the approach that I first used in language learning didn't really work. Now I use both a little bit of willpower and medication and knowing when to take breaks in order to manage these things. I can go into this a little bit deeper in another video if you guys like, but for now, I think that as long as you're doing a little bit every day, it will get easier and it will accumulate. It's just about building a habit that you can sustain. I believe in myself and I believe in you. Another reason why you think you might not be able to learn a language is because you don't know where to start. This is one of the biggest reasons for me to not start sooner. There's tons of videos online of how to learn languages by polyglots, but I rarely see videos of how to do day one, week one, step one. Now, I started with Duolingo alphabets, and then I moved on to a online lesson for learning basic grammar and sentence structure, and then I moved on to the app called Link, which I will show here. I highly recommend it. It's a decent place to start, although I would recommend doing things a little bit differently than what I did, but I can go over that in a different video of the things that I would do better if I started again. These are just some of the reasons that affected me for why I didn't start learning sooner. Now let's go on to talk about why it's good to learn a language. The first thing is obvious. You get to connect with others. English may be a very dominant language in the world right now, but many people still speak their native languages. And if you make an effort to speak their native language with them, they will be very impressed and just like over the moon with you. Learning another language is a great way to connect with people that you normally wouldn't have met if you didn't speak their language. I've made a bunch of friends online, and they really help keep me engaged in the language. Another good reason to learn a language is that you can reconnect with your culture or heritage. Maybe you have family that speaks another language and you don't, and you'd like to communicate with them, or maybe you just don't have contact with that part of your family anymore and that culture of your family anymore, and you would really like to reconnect with it. I always knew I was Ukrainian growing up, although I didn't grow up with my dad, who is my Ukrainian side. I grew up with my mom. But I always was different, and I knew I was different, and I was treated different. And I think that really pushed me to reconnect with my Ukrainian side and really identify with that. I started researching Ukrainian culture and history and going to cultural events in my city, and I've really started to feel more connected with my culture and with the people that live it, and it really helps me feel like I'm connected to a community, not just an idea, if that makes any sense. Another good reason to learn another language is it will improve your memory. Now, as we age, it's normal for our brains to decline, but if you keep them sharp, like with something like language learning, it is less likely that you will have memory problems as you age, or even like I do now with my DID and dissociative amnesia. It has greatly improved to the point where I am remembering day-to-day things now. I can remember people in my life better. I can remember shopping lists. I get lost less. I don't get lost as easy. And these are all things that I can kind of remember even if another alter was in control of the body. So it's been a huge improvement from where I used to be before. It's just so much nicer to actually remember my life a little bit more. Now that's very DID specific, but as I said before, Learning languages can really help your memory as you age and make it less likely for you to develop things like dementia. So not only does it help with dementia, but if you have a dissociative disorder like I do, it can help with dissociative amnesia and amnesia barriers. The last reason that I have for you to learn a language is it can help with your depression. Now, this is just my personal experience, but I used to be incredibly depressed to the point where I felt like a prisoner in my own body simply because my disabilities made it so that I couldn't really live life. And that was awful to experience. I'm getting better now, but that's another thing. My depression was debilitating, but language learning not only gave me a distraction, but something that I could work towards and be proud of myself for. Even before I started seeing any real progression in the language, I was proud of my dedication to the language. My dedication to having something to look forward to keep me going, was really important and made a huge difference. Now, I still needed medication, but I think that language learning was one of the things that really pulled me out of that pit of darkness. These are just some reasons that affected me, but maybe some of it will resonate with you. If you want to hear more about my language learning journey or my life in general, like and subscribe and follow me on TikTok at The Fellowship of Mithril. Dziękuję za uwagę I pobaczmos. Pa pa! Shlo bula no. I can read some French and I know important phrases like tabarnak. I know some important phrases like tabarnak.